Well, welcome, and thank you so much for watching this. I'm very excited to be able to present today just a little bit of information about my own personal experiences with online and blended learning, and hopefully share some resources that you'll find valuable and useful in your own online or blended learning classroom. So today I am here to present the 9 best practices that I find are essential for remote learning. My name is Joseph Lamb, and I'm a teacher at East Central High School in St. Leon, Indiana. Just a little bit about my background information. I'm a 2008 Purdue graduate with a degree in biochemistry. I have a Master of Arts in Education from the University of Indianapolis and an administrative degree as well from Ball State University. I've been teaching biological and chemical sciences for 8 years now. I've spent 2 years as an e-learning coach and 1 year as an online and blended learning curriculum director. So hopefully my experiences that I can share with you today will hopefully be helpful in developing and designing remote learning experiences for your students. Let's talk about some learning objectives. By the end of this professional development, you should be able to understand some best practices in online, digital, and blended learning, and hopefully find practical applications to make your online experience a positive one, not just for you, but for your students as well. We're in a very interesting time right now, and it's important to remember what best practices are both in face-to-face and online learning. They may look a little bit different, but it's still essential to have a positive learning experience to incorporate some of those best practices. Here's a list, so to speak. The first one, be present. I think it's so important in an online environment that the students know that the teacher is there. It's very difficult for students to learn in an environment where it's just, here's the content, don't communicate with the teacher. The teacher should be communicating as often as possible, using announcements, discussion boards posting to facilitate communication and help students feel connected with their teacher and each other. Setting communication expectations is very important. You know, and I all know students who expect a reply within 15 minutes. Make sure that students understand that we have other things that need to be taken care of. Don't get us wrong, we want to be able to help you as much as possible, but it's very important that they understand that, hey, I'll expect a reply back in 24 hours. What are some tools, tips, and tricks for this? I always like to have a discussion forum that is open for frequently asked questions, because odds are if students have a question or one student has a question, that many students probably have that very same question. And this is a great way for students to be able to ask for help without actually having to ask for help because they read a question that they were already going to ask in the first place. Make scheduled posts and announcements and try to be as consistent as possible with the posting. I know that I like to post my online content every Sunday at right around 8 o'clock for the next week, so that way students know what to be able to do for the following week. And also have a one-stop shop for assignment due dates and activities. I've actually found the weekly e-learning plan that we've used in the Sunman Dearborn Community School Corporation to be a very valuable asset as I direct students to that, even when utilizing multiple platforms of software such as Play-Doh and Google Classroom. All the information of everything that they need to do is right there, and they can see it very easily. They know what the due date is, and they can submit it as well very quickly, very easily. A one-stop shop for everything you need for online learning. 2 is create a supportive community. Yeah, I went there, especially with the picture on the right. Create opportunities not just for teacher-student interaction, but student-student interaction. You want to be able to encourage peer-to-peer interaction so students don't feel so isolated. That's one of the biggest struggles that I know I've had personally with online and blended learning, is that sometimes you just feel like you're on an island as a student, that there really isn't anyone that you can bounce ideas off of or talk to or anything like that. But as online learning has developed and changed over time, it becomes imperative that we work to create supportive communities, not just of teachers and students, but also of students themselves. So one thing that I like to do is I like to create an opportunity for students to introduce themselves so that students can get to know one another on a personal level. I do realize that many students in online environments are going to be at least somewhat familiar with each other, but sometimes having and I know it's cheesy, icebreaker activity is a way to kind of get students engaged in the discussion forums and to give them practice in communicating with each other in an online environment. I like to set small go-to groups for troubleshooting and question asking, so I'll group my students into groups of 2 or 3 or 4, and kind of allow those students to work together on things. Have them exchange phone numbers, have them be able to work on assignments together digitally, whether it be over a Google Doc, whether it be through a Google Meet. Give students an opportunity to work with each other. Actually helps eliminate a lot of problems on your end as well, because students will be communicating with each other about expectations and assignments and ask for questions, and that may alleviate some of the communication that you would end up having to do with those students. Instead of having to send one email 4 times, they end up sharing information with each other, which ends up helping solve the problem. And then again, set up forms for problem solving issues. I even kind of like to leave these open for units. So if I'll have a Unit 1 discussion forum that's open, and students who are having trouble with certain questions on there, they can actually post something and then students can reply it. Now, obviously, that's something you're going to want to be able to monitor, but it's a way to get students to interact with each other. And building that community is so important, especially when sometimes students can feel very, very isolated. Set expectations. You know as well as I know that students thrive on routine, and setting this up at the beginning of the year can save headaches later on down the line. This includes frequency of communication, feedback time, and how often students should interact with the instructor. Having a formula, so to speak, on a week-by-week basis really saves a bunch of time. I know that when I first taught online, it was very much a little bit of everything here, there, and everywhere. And by kind of removing that and coming up with a set routine week by week, students were able to understand more about what my expectations were and how to go through and solve all of those problems. Some tools and tricks. Share with students how much time should be expected each week on assignments and activities. I like to ballpark a number in there. Say, hey, you're going to probably be taking about an hour to complete this activity. It just gives students a better idea of whether they're on pace in terms of how much time they're spending on each particular assignment. And consider what tools will be best for setting up a variety of experiences: Google Meets, screen recording, social media, and stick to just a handful of those. Some of the more interesting professional developments I've been to are, 50 tricks, 50 apps in 50 minutes. And while that's great, learning all those apps is great, I like to try to stick to 3 to 5 applications, websites, whatever you call it, to use for students. So it becomes familiar, they understand it better, and it just gives them a better experience because they learn how to use that tool well instead of having to use 50 different tools, sort of okay. Vary instructional experiences just as it would be in the classroom. Setting up a variety of instructional experiences is best practice in online and blended learning. Now that can be a bit of a challenge, especially when we don't see our kids on a day-to-day or weekly or maybe not even for the full semester. Consider options for students. Some students work better alone while others work better with others. I try my best not to make that would include things like truly instructional time, watching a video. That may include some flexibility, collaboration among students. There's a variety of different ways that we can utilize the technology that we have available to us to create a variety of instructional experiences for our students. So what I would say is consider more than just the basic Plato software that a lot of schools are going to nowadays. What in-class activities can be used or redesigned to function in an online environment? Maybe there's some other type of software that is used. There's tons of resources that are out there. You just have to search for them and look for the ones that you find are the most engaging or ones that align mostly to the standards that you're trying to teach. Online simulations, project, video recordings, have students video record themselves. Activities, the kids are at home. There's a lot of stuff that you can do at home. I'm even looking here at the stuff that's in my house and I'm thinking, oh, cool. You could do some really neat geometry projects with this. How much is it going to cost to carpet your house? Think about the area of the carpet that's in your house and how much that's going to cost. There's a lot of different ways. Backyard, you could do biology stuff in the backyard by looking at trees and trying to figure out what types of trees that they are and all the different plants that are out there. There's lots of different ways that we can engage kids. It just may look a little bit different than what it looks like in the classroom. And enhance your online course with the functionality of whatever learning management system you're using, whether it be Google Classroom, Canvas, Otis, the list goes on and on. Think about the functionality of those things and contact your technology instructional coach or your technology coordinator for tips and tricks on how to utilize the management system, because there are lots of ways that those tools can simplify the learning experience for kids. Using synchronous and asynchronous activities. Sometimes there's just nothing better than to have a live conversation with students about assignments and activities. Having open office hours is critical, and students should know those office hours. More engagement can take place with synchronous meetings and with groups and individual students. So while we're going to have some asynchronous instruction, meaning that students can access it at any time, it's also important to have synchronous instruction as well, where the teacher is present, maybe in a Google Meet, and sharing information with students. Again, use Google Meet as a way to meet up with individual students, not necessarily just as a group, and encourage small group Google Meet sessions. Students can create their own, in many instances, Google Meet sessions. Have them be able to work and collaborate with each other, and you have a synchronous discussion there, you just may not be present. So it's a great way to get students engaged in the activity. Ask for feedback. This was so important to me when I first started teaching online. Was feedback for teachers in an online environment is absolutely essential, and use that information to make critical instructional design changes and functionality changes to make the course more meaningful and more engaging for students. Just like with anything, the more feedback we get as educators, the better we become, and the more we can make changes to our instruction to better serve the needs of our kids. And that's exactly what this feedback provides. Create an anonymous survey for students to fill out, and even during a Google Meet, ask, how are things going? What's working for you and what isn't? What kind of suggestions do you have for the course? I've already had a few students perform a Google Meet with me and give me feedback on what they feel is working well and what they feel isn't. And that's really powerful for me because I want this experience to be the best it possibly can for the kids, given the current circumstances. We're preparing discussions and preparing deep discussions. Too many times when we want to have a discussion, it becomes somewhat superficial. We want to dive deep into open-ended questions. We want to encourage critical thinking, while also reinforcing procedural process of discussion. What does that look like? You may need to model that for kids, not only maybe by having a mock discussion forum that students can see and take a look at so that they understand what it looks like, but also to model that behavior in discussion forums ourselves when we're interacting with kids. Support students in reflection and inquiry. That should be part of our job as well, is in those discussion forums, we should be asking those questions that allow students to dive deeper, even when they've already responded to something. Make open-ended questions, and again, model discussion and question and answer. Stagger due dates of responses. I found that to be very useful, where I may ask students to, by Wednesday, have their initial response posted, and then by Sunday, have their replies to 2 or 3 different classmates. Provide guidelines on student responses, so be detailed on what the expectations are with that, and provide choices and options. And also be a part of that discussion yourself. I think a big part of a discussion is also having the teacher be a part of that and provide feedback and ask those questions that may help dig a little bit deeper than what the students may just ask of themselves. External resources. There are literally thousands of online resources available for free use. I like oercommons.org. It's a great way to find tons of resources that are absolutely free that you can use and post in your online classroom. And then consider links to current events. There's a lot of very unusual things happening right now. Consider how that may link to some of your content area. A quick Google survey can yield tons of results. You can also consult your local instructional coaches, as that seems to be becoming more of a trend in buildings. And even enlist student help in identifying high-quality content and resources. I've always liked to do that, where I'll ask the students in an online classroom, hey, I want you to find some really cool resources that are related to this topic. And I also want you to vet them to be able to tell me if they are good or not. So it engages the student in finding that information, and then also determining, is it high quality or not, which actually shows growth in learning if students can find high-quality material and then be able to rank it as high quality. And then lastly, I always like to plan a good end project. Many online courses culminate with a project or hands-on task. And this can include a variety of skills, ideas, and activities. It's not just limited to taking a test. I think about bridge building projects for physics classes or catapult projects. Students do have access to some materials at home that they might be able to use to do that. And if they don't, there's always the possibility that those could be dropped off by the school for the student to be able to have that to create some type of activity. I'm a big fan of showing what you know. I like giving students the option to pick what project they are going to create. And then there's a link there that's available as well that has 38 ways that students can create digital content through blogs, through vlogs, through creating websites. I mean, the list goes on and on about what students are able to do nowadays with the Google Suite and the technology that they have available to them. It is amazing what kind of stuff kids can come up with if you give them the freedom and opportunity to do so. We know this from face to face, but this is something we can also see in an online environment. Hopefully you found some of that information useful. Again, that's just my own personal experience. I'd love to hear from some of you all about your own experiences and what you find beneficial as we move along into some uncharted waters for many of us. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present, and I hope you all have a fantastic day and start to your school year. Take care, and bye-bye.